this important measure.
Thank you. I just want to point out that we're going to have three in support, three speakers in support, three against. I'm not sure how you want to do the math here.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, members, Theo Payos represents the Alliance for Retail Energy Markets. We are essentially the ESPs. We are the party that contracts between, on one hand, a Qualcomm or a UC or a CSU and the energy source, whether it be a generator or someone trying to get rid of some excess energy. And we are operating in a market that's capped. We're in a market that's heavily regulated. We are in competition with an entity that has a default provider status, has guaranteed cost of recovery. All of the energy that was allocated to the direct access market was taken up, as the author just mentioned, lickety split. We have clients who want more of it. For instance, Safeway has a number of their stores on direct access. They want to bring more stores in. Why? Because they get a nominal savings on the energy, which gives them the ability to invest in their stores, to give better wages and retirement packages to their workers that allows them to upgrade their technology to be able to use energy in even a smarter way. We work with our customers so that they are buying just as much energy as they want. We will put in the resources into a company in a way the utilities just can't do, not because they're incompetent, just because they're not designed to specifically tailor their services to one or two specific clients. So many of you might have been at the TechNet Energy Day where they actually had one of our clients' booths, and you saw the great technology that commercial customers can deploy. That technology is best deployed under direct access. We will work with them. They can save energy and they can save a little bit of money. For the CSU system, for instance, it's $1 million for campus. Not a huge amount of money, but how many students is that? How many professors is that? The LA Unified School District is a client. There's some savings that they can put back into the system. Companies all across the state in your district, unless you're in a public utility district, all use this energy, and and they love it and they appreciate it. And it's a program that you can administer and give the authority to administer that doesn't cost the taxpayers anything. All of the cost shifting concerns have been taken care of, as the author just said, through 15 years of rulemaking. We don't hear about these cost shift arguments unless it's in the face of a DA bill. It's not an argument that's been made at the PUC. So we believe that this is a very important program. Our customers love it. They want more of it. Even though this program is very limited in that it's 100% renewable and it's capped at a certain amount, we still think that there's going to be a number of customers that take it, and we think it's still the cheapest way by far for any company, any government entity, any special district, any school district to go 100% renewable. By far the cheapest way to do that. There is not a tariff. There is not a program. There is not a way to go 100% renewable that is anywhere close as economical as this is. So we think that this is a great program. We appreciate the Senator's hard work on this, and we hope to get your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Julie Malinowski-Ball on behalf of the California Biomass Energy Alliance. I represent the existing solid fuel biomass power producers that are RPS eligible facilities, but they are exactly what the senator said, was that they have expiring contracts. They are expired now and in the next few years, and they frankly have nowhere to go. You open up direct access for a renewable product, and this lickety-split thing that I keep hearing about is exactly up our alley and something we are in desperate need of. Today I'm here representing both the idle facilities and the facilities that have expiring contracts, and for them it's all about jobs. You know, biomass is a very labor-intensive operation, so when you close a facility, you close a 50-megawatt facility, you send hundreds of people home. That's people who actually work at the facilities and those in the fuel supply infrastructure. So for us, having another opportunity out there, more buyers out there like direct access companies, that's another opportunity for us to have hope that we can put these people back to work and maintain the workers that we have today. We respectfully ask for your I vote.
Thank you. One more speaker.
Mr. Chairman and members, Scott Wetch on behalf of the California Coalition of Utility Employees and the State Association of Electrical Workers. When we deregulated the energy market and ushered in direct access, we lost 6,000 jobs. That's a lot of jobs. And as a result of that, we've been before this legislature in almost every instance opposing almost every bill looking to advance direct access. But people shouldn't be shocked that we're here supporting this bill today, because in 2009, not only did the utility workers support an expansion of direct access, but the investor-owned utilities also supported an expansion of direct access, because there were other things, frankly, that needed to be done that they supported, and they came to a point of reaching a deal on a Chris Kehoe bill. That expansion of direct access did not contain any of the protections that Mr. Hertzberg has built into this bill, and that this committee very wisely asked him to accept as amendments. It wasn't 100% renewable. It didn't have any of the advanced CUPC oversight of the procurement process. It didn't have labor protections to protect local jobs. None of the major provisions that have been drafted into this bill since it left Senate Energy Committee and in Senate Energy Committee existed in 2009 when we did the last expansion. Given all the hard work and how far this has evolved, my membership feels that this is a worthy bill, and we would urge every member of the committee to please support the bill and keep it moving. Thank you.
Thank you.
Andrea DeVoe, on behalf of TechNet, out of respect for your three-witness rule, I'll just respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Others in support, please state your name, affiliation, and everybody during this segment should be in support.
Dominic Damari here on behalf of Covanta Energy in support, and also on behalf of Albertson Safeway in support.
Thank you.
Mike Robeson on behalf of Qualcomm in support.
Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa Cortez Roth on behalf of the California Wind Energy Association in support.
Thank you.
Gavin McHugh on behalf of the California Manufacturers and Technology Association and Shell Energy America. We're in support.
Thank you.
Thank you. Doug Subers on behalf of Tenaska and the Western States Petroleum Association in support.
Thank you.
Cassandra Goff on behalf of Calpine Corporation and our geothermal resources, and we are also an energy service provider in support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sylvia Solis Shaw on behalf of Advanced Energy Economy and on behalf of the Pacific Merchant Shipping Association, both in strong support.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members. Jason Murphy on behalf of the University of California. Our letter is late. The sergeant's passing it out now, but we're pleased to be in support today. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Now let's hear from the opposition. Again, we'll have one lead speaker, 3 main opponents, and then everyone else will just identify themselves. Please begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Matt Friedman, representing the Utility Reform Network. With all due respect to Senator Hertzberg, we are here rising in opposition to SB 286. Although our opposition is not reflected in the analysis, we did send a letter, and in time we did confirm. We're not sure why our opposition was omitted from the analysis itself, but we have been consistently opposed to this bill as it's moved through both houses. The author suggests that this is a small expansion of direct access. It expands direct access by about a third. We think that's pretty significant. It's not a tiny expansion, and we think that it could have significant consequences on bundled customers and on the ability of the state to achieve many of its long-term resource and clean energy goals. Look, direct access has been in place for 20 years. This is not a new idea in California. It's not something that someone has just discovered. It does not represent some kind of innovative future. It is actually our present and our past. And there is very little demonstration to date that it has added much value to meeting the state's key energy policy goals. And it also has nothing to do with who owns the generation. I understand Senator Hertzberg was retelling the history of deregulation and when the utilities owned all the power plants. That's really not the conversation we're having right now. This isn't about who owns generation. It's about who serves retail customers. And the fundamental problem with the direct access model is that electric service providers simply don't make long-term commitments on behalf of their customers. And that's why the amendment to require such long-term commitments has been rejected as part of today's hearing. Basically, more direct access, in our view, means more short-term commitments, more short-term customers. And the grid of the future that we spend all this time talking about in this committee and in other committees requires long-term commitments and long-term investments. So there's a fundamental disconnect between the business model of the direct access market and what's needed to meet a lot of our key state energy policy goals. In addition, we do have concerns about the risks of migration of customers back to utilities. Back in 2000, when the wholesale markets went haywire and prices went through the roof, what happened is that most of the electric service providers dumped their customers back to the utilities with very little notice. And although there are some provisions that attempt to deal with this in existing law, really the program isn't designed for a mass exodus back to bundled service. And if we had an episode like that again, and let's not assume that it could never happen again, we run the risk of some serious dislocation. Also, I would point out that a lot of the procurement by the electric service providers is simply not regulated by the PUC. And there's extensive confidentiality around it. It's actually a lot harder to get good information about what the ESPs are doing than it is to get good information about what the investor-owned utilities or the community choice aggregators or the publicly owned utilities are doing. And so there's constantly a battle over trade secrets and proprietary information. And this makes it a lot harder to get a good window into what's going on. And then finally, there's been an argument made that direct access is needed because there are existing renewable facilities coming off long-term contracts with utilities and they have nowhere to go. And the presumption is that opening up direct access will then create a new set of buyers that will naturally buy from these existing facilities, including existing biomass and other QFs. This is kind of an apples and oranges thing. There's sort of an implied suggestion that this will happen, but in fact, electric service providers will buy the cheapest products that they can, and there is no indication, no guarantee that existing biomass facilities, which are relatively expensive to operate, are going to be the primary beneficiaries, or that any of the existing facilities coming off contract where the IOUs have chosen not to recontract because they're relatively expensive, that somehow these will be the candidate targets for direct access procurement. Customers today with the investor-owned utilities do have options for greening their own renewable energy footprint. First of all, they can put solar on their roof. The legislature has expanded the net metering program, and the commission is in the process of implementing that. And just recently, this legislature enacted SB 43, Senator Wolk's bill, to create a green tariff shared renewables program, a bill that was really shaped heavily by activity in this committee. Those programs are going to allow customers to opt into 100% renewable energy portfolios where utilities will be signing long-term contracts for new facilities being built in their service territories. That program's rolling out January 1 of next year. It hasn't even been implemented yet. We're already talking about ways to effectively undermine it by creating different options for other customers. So, to sum it up, we don't see the expansion of direct access as really solving any of our key problems. It creates new risks, and it drives the market towards increased reliance on short-term behavior. And we're looking at a future where we need long-term commitments to get where we want to go. Thank you.
Mitch Mitchell, representing San Diego Gas and Electric, part of the Semper Energy Utilities. We've been very consistent in all of our discussions about the expansion of RPS, direct access, SB 350, and our biggest concern these days is the cost to the customer. You heard the supporters of this bill say that cost savings, cost savings, cost savings. Everybody's looking for a way to get out and to find a new structure to operate under. We have been making 20-year obligations since 2006 on behalf of our customers, planning for them, planning for their energy future, and therefore we are concerned about the departure of these customers. The concern happens to be about the small business that doesn't have the savvy or the personnel to engage in the direct access market. One of the things that we've discussed is that in our service area, we are feeling the ill effects of rate increases significantly. Since 2013, January, rates for the business customer, small business, have gone up 5 cents, and also for commercial and industrial have gone up 5 cents. What they're all saying to us is, you have to make sure you protect us. And the non-participating customer is our biggest concern. These days you have a system where if you can afford to get out and find a new structure that will give you cost savings, you will do that. For those on the residential side, they go solar. For those on the business side, the large commercial industrial folks are looking to go direct access. As you heard Matt with Turn say, they have options of going green. But in this instance, we want to be assured, as the utility, that our non-participating customers are protected from these long-term 20-year obligations that we have been making and that we will continue to make as part of the discussions on around raising the RPS. We are not certain that all the loopholes in the PCIA or CAM have been covered, and until we're certain that those indeed have been addressed, we cannot support this legislation.
Davina Flemings on behalf of Pacific Gas and Electric. We are opposed. We have serious concerns about direct access providers not engaging in long-term contracts. As my colleagues previously mentioned, we as a utility are required to enter into long-term, short-term, or mid-term contracts. ESPs tend to engage in short-term contracts that are cheaper, essentially, and we as the utility go out and procure on behalf of our customers. And when those customers depart our system to go with an ESP, we're still left holding the bag in those costs. And they are borne across our ratepayer base. And so we did not intend to put a poison pill in the bill. What our intent is to level the playing field with direct access providers if they want to engage and take our customers.
Move the bill.
Second.
Nick Pappas with Southern California Edison. Also opposed and would like to echo the comments of Turn associated with the costs of customers returning en masse unexpectedly to the utility, which we think are potentially very significant. Thank you.
Thank you. Now had 3 speak in favor and 3 opposed. Now let's hear from others who are opposed. At this time, you should just state your name, your identification, and your position on the bill.
Good afternoon. Victoria Rome with Natural Resources Defense Council. Respectfully oppose for the reasons stated by Mr. Friedman with Turn. Thank you.
Others opposed? Others opposed? Is there anybody in between? Great. Let's anyone besides members of the committee who are in between. Questions? Mr. Patterson?
Appreciate it. Would like to have the prerogative of perhaps having some of the other people who...
Sure. Anyone in particular?
Well, let me ask the question first. Do we have a cost shift or don't we? And I'd like those who claim that there's a cost shift to be here to answer that, and for those who think there is not a cost shift to answer that. And I would like to weigh those two.
So can we have folks from the
utilities
please,
or others?
Please come. Thank you.
And particularly with respect to the non-participating customers.
And you'd like the author to address this as well, correct?
Whoever wishes to address. But because this is, and I'd like to just sort of set the stage for it. It seems to me that we are in a circumstance, as far as I'm concerned, where I really like the idea of saving money for customers, and I really like the idea of having some degree of freedom and marketplace competition. At the same time, I'm struggling with offsetting the cost shift to either the non-participants or to ratepayers, because it seems to me that there is a march of movement that, quite frankly, looks to me to be away from the present set of circumstances and toward a marketplace and toward a different set of decisions that customers can make. Having said that, the bigger concern I bring is the rump utility we leave behind, or the grid that we leave behind. And it's very important for me to understand what this does for a few of the large users and what this might then do with respect to, if there is this offset for particularly the non-participating, if that means that rates are going to go up, and if so, I'd like to quantify that with respect to others who either cannot or do not wish to participate in that movement, away from the utilities and to the...
I believe we might... Do we have a PUC technical person in here? Somebody from the PUC? No? Thought we might. Yeah, I mean, look, this question was asked by everybody, and we have a very stringent... I mean, this is my point. One, is for more than 10 years we've been grappling with this issue in order to create a purchase cost and difference adjustment, a cost allocation mechanisms, costs associated with coming back on the grid, all of this doomsday stuff that continually be told. And what have I learned? I've learned that basically, I mean, we can look at what happened in the energy crisis. That was a different time. But since all of these factors have been in place, how many companies, I'd like to know, have actually come back onto the grid? And they've paid their fair share, point one. Point two, there's no issue between business and residential. That's clear. So the question is, if there's a cost shift, it's only happening to other businesses. And what I suggested to you is I have a letter that I showed that I quoted from you that said we don't have a problem with this. But what always happens is it's the sky is falling kind of an approach to this process. And the PUC, I mean, all of the mechanisms are in place. We have been grappling with this problem for more than a dozen years because we're concerned about it. It's my point about the unintended consequences. So I'm totally sensitive to that. But and we've took an amendment in this measure, and our amendment specifically says that was it comment 3? I think it was comment 3 that said there won't be a cost. If there's a question, to make it even clearer in this statute, that we will. Comment 4. Customers of other providers shall be responsible for proportionate share of programs of direct access. So we put the language in at the suggestion of the committee to make it clear. It's my notion of bootstraps and suspenders. So, A, the law is pretty clear. B, when the time was relevant, they certainly weren't objecting to it. And let me tell you, the answer to your question about the legacy, go read Sempra Energy's 50-year plan. Their plan is not to be a provider. My point about Edison at 20%, PG&E at 40%, this is kind of where it's a different world. They don't expect to be the producers of electrons. They expect to be pipes and wires companies. I read their plan. I've looked at them. I've met with the top execs of all three investor utilities. That's why I started out by saying that utilities provide a critically important backbone to our economy. I'm not here to destroy them. I'm here to create some sense about where we are. And the last point, Assemblymember Patterson, Mr. Mayor, is that's really important here is that this is a small increase of a very small market, right? Investor utilities are not 100%. This only applies to investor-owned utilities. The current direct access market's 12.9%. I increase this on this measure by about 4%. You have a backlog of much more than the people who are currently want to buy. We have pressure from businesses. We do have historic legacy contracts. The utilities are in a tough bind to some extent. I get that. But we are in a transition. How do we have the chairman's measure on 50% renewables? How do we have the pro tems rules on that? How do we make hay of all this stuff? And how do we avoid the political embarrassments of places like we've already had close when we tell us that we're supposed to be the greenest state in America?
So I stipulate then that the answer to my question is there cost shifting. Your answer is no.
But the answer is the law has taken care of it to make sure that through these indifference amounts and the like, no.
I understand
Correct.
The complexity.
Correct.
Also with respect to the cost shift amongst categories, you are stipulating that it is a shift. If there is a shift, it's in the category of the business users, and it will not seep its way to the ratepayer. I want to. Right. So, and that's your presentation.
100%.
To the utilities. Number one, is there a cost shift? If so, could you tell me how it does in fact take place, and could you size it in terms of the bill in front of us? What will this do to the non-participating customers? Will it drive rates up? And will there be seepage toward utility customers who are residential?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. And
how far, how deep? Please scope and explain the cost shift as you understand it, if there is one.
Sure, absolutely. Nick Pappas again with Edison. First, I just want to thank the Senator. Clearly has done a lot of research on this and for diving in deep on it. For Edison, the most important and significant concern we have related to cost shift is not in the day-to-day cost shift. I'll let my sister utilities speak to that issue. For us, the bigger concern is what happens when customers come back en masse and the legal structures around protecting our bundled customers and those returning customers when they return. The current structure, frankly, does not ensure ensure that our ratepayers will be indifferent or that the customers coming back will be protected. There was some pretty clear direction following the energy crisis from the legislature to establish a process by which customers would be protected. Frankly, we think it falls short. There's two main concerns in how that's currently implemented. Currently, there's a requirement that direct access providers, the ESPs, post bonds to ensure the reentry costs for those customers come back. So let's assume we're in a situation of very severe market conditions, a sort of energy crisis 2.0 where prices are very high. ESPs may not be able to fulfill their contracts. Their customers come back to us. We then, at a moment's notice, have to serve those customers regardless of the cost. The current structure, in theory, would protect our customers from those costs for 6 months. After 6 months, the cost associated with bringing those customers back online comes across all of our customers equally. So it's socialized across all of our customers, whether they're participating or not. By way of example, during the energy crisis, similar structure. So as we've heard, ESPs predominantly pursue or by and large pursue short-term contracts. As we saw during the energy crisis, the utilities who were largely served by short-term contracts as a result of deregulation, we needed to post about $10 billion in DWR bonds. The DWR had to post about $10 billion in bonds to essentially finance long-term contracts to get our customers essentially back on track. So if about 13% of our customers currently are subject to DA short-term contracts, in a similar situation where 13% have to come back to us, or 16 to 17% under this bill, that could be potentially, 16 to 17% of that enormous bonding. I mean, it really depends on the circumstances, but we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars could potentially come to our customers for this math and voluntary return.
Kind of follow up then.
Can I first let's establish a quorum? Sure. Please call the roll.
Rendon.
Here.
Rendon present. Patterson.
Here.
Patterson present. Ashajian. Bonilla. Here. Bonilla present. Burke. Daly. Eggman. Here. Eggman present. Garcia. Hadley. Here. Hadley present. Hernandez.
Present.
Hernandez present. Obernolte.
Here.
Obernolte present. Quirk. Santiago. Here. Santiago present. Ting. Williams. 8.
Thank you.
We have a quorum. A couple of things. First of all, I know there may be some confusion about the amendment, so I'll clarify the motion and see if someone wants to make it before moving forward.
Okay.
Mr. Patterson.
So I'll characterize your testimony in terms of what amounts to a doomsday scenario. Is that? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like you have a concern that this may fail, and then there will be this huge rush back to the utilities. Can you give me a good understanding of the history of this kind of movement? Have we seen a movement away? Apparently, the DAs are snapped up pretty quick.
They are.
So there is a movement away. Has there been a movement back? Has that cost you the kinds of dollars that you are concerned about? And has it, in fact, required you to bump up rates across the categories as a result?
I think two good questions. And just very briefly, I think you're correct. This is the worst case scenario. That's not to say a smaller scenario could happen. If even one ESP were to fail and kick its customers back to us, we could see a smaller but very similar cost shift onto our customers. To your second point, I think since the reopening of DA, we really haven't had a sufficient time horizon to see, just in the last 5 years, if such circumstances would occur. But the most significant example, which came up earlier in testimony today, was during the energy crisis, we did see a significant return of ESP customers back to the utility. That's my understanding. The most significant example was 2000, 2001.
Could I have just one more opportunity to question? Is the CMTA representative here? They're not? They're not here?
Yes.
To those who are represent, I need to understand the level, the size of the saving. I think we tried to get this answer, by the way, and I think we got some earlier answers to it. And I did want to make sure that I understood what those who say there's going to be a real savings. The answer to that question that I posed this morning has come back, and I have some. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding it correctly. That all things considered, this is not a huge amount of savings. That it is essentially at the margins for most. Secondly, that the 100% is a bit troubling for some. And that perhaps the most significant reason is that there are some of the large-scale users who like the PR advantage, the PR of going to 100%. Is that basic? Is that CMTA? Is that the supporters' basic fundamental understanding of this? It's a little bit of a saving, so it's not real big. Number two, there are some concerns about the 100%, and then there's some larger interest in sort of the PR benefit.
Just want to clarify, Mr. McEwen, you're representing CMTA?
Yeah, I'm here on behalf of CMTA, and I will admit, Mr. Patterson, I'm not deep in the weeds on this.
Okay.
There's a big hearing going on next door, so I was asked to come over and pinch hit. But typically what I've heard for the industrial...
This was the big hearing.
Another big hearing, Senator, excuse me. But, pardon me, sir. But I've typically heard that it's a saving for the industrial users somewhere in the realm of around 10%. That's what I've heard. And beyond that, if you would like me to get some additional information, I can do that for you.